And see through you, see your true colors.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Listen to Pavarotti. Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the IDAHO4 case. And in this episode, we've got some new things that have come out, and we're going to dive into those, and then we're going to revisit an old subject around those roommates that I think other people have tried to dive into, but they haven't quite gone far enough in their analysis, and I'm going to show some things that are undeniable about them. But first, let's hear from Steve G and company and see if we can pick apart what they have to say right now.
You thought that Bryan Kohberger's guilty pleas and his life sentences marked the end of his warped and sadistic story. You're only half right. They ended his real life story, and we can all be thankful for that. But his lifetime story is just beginning. Lifetime, of course, is the cable TV network that famously gave its ripped from the headlines treatment to the Jodi Arias case and to the Amanda Knox case and to the Menendez brothers case. And now they've turned their attention to the Idaho student murders and the monster who committed them. I asked Steve and Alivia about that and more. Have a listen to our conversation.
Steve, Alivia, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Let me start with you, Steve. You know, it seems we get a drib and a drab of information every week or two. I'm just wondering how you're processing all of it.
Hi, you think it's over and then something comes out, you hear about, your phone starts blowing up and all this new information comes out and you just kind of start searching just like everyone else. And it's shocking every time because you think that it's over, but it just keeps on hitting you.
And Steve, it's going to continue to hit you every time some little drib and drab comes out, and in between when any drib and drab comes out, until you get mainstream morons like brainless Banfield to start demanding for complete transparency in this case. Until everything is transparent and out in the open, you're never going to have any peace with this situation. Demand it. Let's see it. Let's put it to bed. And demand morons like Banfield to do it as well. You have that power.
Call your attention to an interesting little piece of information that just emerged in one of the court documents. A real court document, part of the slow motion release of all those orders and evidence that have been kept under seal for almost 3 years, the gag order. It seems that Bryan Kohberger agreed to his plea deal, something that wiped out a public trial, wiped it off the map, less than 1 week after learning that his sister Amanda had been added to the prosecution's witness list.
Now, see, this is the kind of one-sided reporting that's going to keep us putting eyes on this thing until something changes. Because as you just heard Banfield say, we've been under a gag order for 3 years. They finally released the witness list from the state. And what does she point out? There's 180 witnesses on this list. She points out Bryan Kohberger's sister. She doesn't point out anybody else on this list. She doesn't point out Quinn Kelly. She doesn't point out Kendi Floria that I got wrong, and I'll explain in this one. She doesn't point out Dr. Gage or the crime scene text. She doesn't point out any of this. All she points out and focuses in on is the one witness in here that she can make up some BS about Kohberger. It's Kohberger's sister. This is not reporting, and we should demand better out of our reporters.
What was the reason for them not giving you everything? Did they say they needed to redact it all first? Was there a logical reason?
I think it's mainly the redactions, as well as the prosecutor's office isn't the custodian of many of these documents, right? You know, they're actually owned by Moscow Police Department or the Idaho Police Department. And so the documents that they own, it's my understanding that they're actually held up with the court process, which is going through that very, very lengthy sealing, unsealing, redaction process. That's my understanding. That's my understanding.
Just the look on Steve's face when she was saying, this is what's holding things up, just makes me believe that I know that he trusted them for a long time, that, you know, they had some things right. And I think he's actually starting to question things now, and he's holding back, biting his tongue, because he has gone out there and created this tidal wave of guilt or BS this entire time. And now if he goes against what he's done this entire time, it's not going to make him look right. And I think he's facing a conundrum, because I think he wants the information as bad as we do at this point. Let's continue.
The other side of the coin is the true story details. You don't even know them all yet. And they keep dropping, like that video that I don't know why I found it so jaw-dropping when I saw the video of the killer hours after his crime, wandering about his day into Costco, out of Costco, into Albertsons. And I was immediately brought to you, and I wondered how you digested that. Steve, what was it like when you saw that?
Creepy to see that guy, the way he walks and moves. It's just unnatural. To see that guy, the way he walks and moves, it's just unnatural.
I think the word you were looking for there, Steve, wasn't unnatural. It was uncoordinated. And that, coupled with this picture, I believe has you thinking, how is this possible with 4 victims inside of 8 minutes? Yeah.
To my eyes, I could see why a lot of girls could pick up on that vibe very quickly. Yeah, it's disturbing to know that was just afterwards, and you want to analyze every action that he did before and after, and yeah, it's hard to watch that.
Alivia, you know, I think so many people on the outside of your story are so perplexed by it. And that doesn't even come close to what I imagine your family is feeling, that how confused you are.
I bet y'all were really confused when you seen this, and you noticed that, you know, there's no gloves on Kohberger's hands in any of these grocery stores. That confused you, didn't it? Oh, yeah. Yeah, just one more of those guilt or talking points that Banfield herself and Steve G and everybody else on that side pushed for 3 years. Kohberger was in the grocery store wearing surgical gloves. It is consciousness of guilt. How many times have we fought that one in our comments? And then when they get the video, along with the fact that they made up all kinds of stuff that, you know, he was buying at these grocery stores, like trash bags and everything else. So he's out burying, you know, unaliving weapons. When it turns out he walked into the store, didn't have any gloves on, bought a cup of coffee. So all that BS over those 3 years that we fought in all of our comment sections, the gloves in Albertsons, the wearing the gloves, putting things in plastic baggies. Turns out he was wearing kitchen gloves, separating his trash. He put his trash in his neighbor's trash can. All lies debunked by law enforcement. I mean, how many lies have they debunked at this point that people talked about for 3 years? None of it was true. And so when things like this start coming out, there is no way that they're not questioning everything in this case. And when new docs come out, we're still getting the one-sided BS reporting. Oh, it was Brian Kohberger's sister. Wow, what could that have meant? Well, how about what could all of the other stuff have meant? like the sheriff returns on warrants. What was the prosecution going to try to do with Candy Floria? Because apparently they were going to use her to back up Dylan and Bethany's story prior to the unalivings. I thought Candy Floria was the one that was the ISP tech. Apparently there was a Candy Floria as an ISP tech, but Candy Floria was actually one of the college students that was with Dylan and Bethany before the atrocity. And I found the police report, so we can go ahead and zero in on that one now. So here's the recently released return of service for the subpoena for Candy Sue Floria, and it was issued by the prosecutor in the case. So they were going to use her as a witness for Dylan and Bethany. And let's look at the police report that talks about what she said. And I believe it's going to be this one right here, number 112 from Dustin Blaker, dated 1/11/2023. But it talks about on November 14th, 2022 at around 15:52 hours, I called, I believe this is Candy Floria, to arrange an interview with her. Candy had already left Moscow and was heading to southern Idaho to be with her family. Candy told me she had contact with Bethany and Dylan on November the 12th, 2022. Dylan arrived at her residence at 22:30, and Bethany arrived at her residence around 23:30. Candy lives at something on Taylor Avenue. Bethany and Dylan were at her residence for 2 to 3 hours. Candy stated she walked them past the Whites sometime before 2 o'clock, but she could not positively tell me. I guess he means not positively tell me the time. Candy stated she stayed on Taylor and then turned around, and she was not sure what route they took home for sure, but felt they kept walking west on Taylor towards King. Candy stated there was a group of 3 or 4 other females with Bethany and Dylan at the time. Candy did state she was drunk at the time, and she could not recall all the events and everyone who was present with the group. Candy stated she thought that LM, who we now know to be likely either Lakeland McComas or Linnea Mueller. Those are the only 2 LMs I can find in the witness report. So likely LM was with the group. Candy was not able to tell me anything else. And there you have it. But you know, one thing becomes apparent when you start really dissecting this potential state witness list, and that is a lot of emphasis was going to be put on the 911 call and who all was there during that, along with all of the people that was around Dylan and Bethany, who they were talking to on the phone before and after the unalivings, which tells me that they knew that Dylan and Bethany was the weakest part of their case, but they probably shouldn't have focused so much on what happened before, and they probably were needing to focus on what happened after the crime, because this, in my opinion, is undeniable now. Now, I showed y'all this in a video, I think last week, and this is all taken straight out of the court record, and this is what the state would have alleged at trial. If you follow the court record, it's very accurate. And that was at 4/24/39, Dylan calls Ethan, and you can see during the foregoing exchange, Dylan also attempted contacting Ethan through Snapchat, grand jury transcript. At 4/24/58, Dylan texts Bethany, "I'm scared or screwed though." 4/25/16, Bethany texts Dylan, "Yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone." And then there is about a minute and 55-second gap between where Dylan makes 3 outgoing calls, 2 by Snapchat, and we don't know who they were to. And then at 4/27/47, Dylan calls Kaylee and calls Xana. According to the grand jury transcript, she again tried calling Kaylee and Xana, but neither responded. Then they would have alleged that Dylan then exited her room and began running towards Bethany's room. And then there's a very short time lapse, about 16 seconds, where Bethany starts calling Maddie and Kaylee. And that is the time that that black vehicle arrives in the neighborhood. This is what the state would have alleged, because this is how the court record shows it. But that's not what the real evidence shows. What the real evidence shows is this. At 4:24:39, Dylan calls Ethan, also attempting to contact Ethan through Snapchat. 4:24:58, Dylan texts Bethany, "I'm scared or screwed though." 4:25:16, Bethany back to Dylan, "Yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone." This is when I believe Dylan left her room and headed down to Bethany's room. She exited her room and began running toward Bethany's bedroom. And then these outgoing calls are made starting at 4:27:11, which is about a minute and 55 seconds later. But when it says Dylan exited her room and began running towards Bethany's bedroom, well, that's really, I think, true. She ran towards Bethany's bedroom, right down those stairs and right out that front door. Either her or Bethany did. And where did they end up? One of them or both of them ended up in a car outside of the King Road residence. And that car could have been one of those Toyota RAV4s that we seen in the body cam parked next to 1112. Because when you hear the door shut exactly between these times on the 1112 King Road video, I don't think it can be mistaken. It's got to be either Dylan or Bethany leaving that house and going and getting in a car and shutting that door. I believe it was Dylan going right down those stairs, out that front door, getting in that car, and then making these three outgoing calls. And this is why I say that. Now, you can hear that door shut at the exact time, in my opinion, where she would have been coming out the front door. And it looks to me like she probably headed right down to this little Toyota right here, because it's a lot closer to that camera where you'd hear that door shut. And either one or both of them got in this thing and started placing those three calls. And I believe those three calls were to the person driving that black Ford Explorer that we're going to see here really, really soon after that. Now, when this vehicle pulls up, you'll clearly see it's not a truck. I mean, it's that Ford Explorer. You can see the back of it right there, and look in these windows for a reflection of the tail lights. And that's going to tell you it did not pull far enough to where it could have turned in between King and Queen. It pulled right into the driveway where it sat till the next day, until a long time after that. Never once does it appear in these windows. And we now have too many comparisons to show that it made the King Road driveway. Okay, we're going to look at this a few times, but this box is the 330 white car pulling in, or the 338. This one's the 330, 356, and then this is that black Ford Explorer we just seen go by. Remember which box is which. All right, we're going to watch it again, but notice the speed of the black Ford Explorer compared to the white cars. It's going just as fast as it goes past 1112. Once again, notice the speed as it goes past 1112. It's going just as fast as the white cars, so we know it went past 1112. Now this time we're going to slow it down just a little bit, and you can see I've got the circle around the windows in 1119 straight in front, and I want you to watch as the tail lights of the three cars appear in the window right as they turn. And the black Jeep or black Ford Explorer never does. One more time. Now you can see from the topography of this photo from the body cam of this officer, and as the road comes down right here, it takes a sharp upturn as it gets about right here. It goes almost straight uphill. You're not seeing the taillights in those windows until the vehicles are past these trash cans and they're beginning to turn onto this road right here. So no, you're not seeing this vehicle in that video because you never see its taillights hit past this trash can. The reason you don't see taillights on this black Ford Explorer is because it pulled directly into the King Road neighborhood right here, and it never left. Now, to give you a better understanding, when you're looking at 1112, the camera is right here. And as you see the white vehicle in all those videos come past 1112 right here, it leaves the camera, and you never see its taillights in that house's windows till it reaches right here as it goes up this steep incline. And then you'll see the windows a second time as it makes this turn and it heads in this direction. But the reason you didn't see the black Ford taillights in that window, it's going the same speed as the white car as it reaches right here. So it didn't turn into those parking spaces. But because it pulls into the driveway, it never hits this steep incline right here. So you won't see its taillights in the window. That vehicle never left that spot that night. So when I go to this police report by Brett Payne, written on January 11th, 2023, but it's in reference to the narrative around his November 13th interview with Maisie Chapin. And it says, on November 13th, 2022, at approximately 2:20 in the afternoon, I interviewed Maisie Chapin at the MPD referencing the quadruple unalivings at 1122 King Road. Maisie is Ethan Chapin's sister. Maisie consented to a forensic search of her phone, and I collected it from her. I asked Maisie to tell me what her day looked like on November 12th, 2022. Maisie stated she had her some kind of formal the night of November 12th, 2022. Maisie stated she did not do much prior to the formal and then went to Hunga Dunga for the event at approximately 7 o'clock. Maisie said she, Hunter Chapin, and Ethan Chapin left the formal with several other friends at approximately 2,000 hours, so 8 o'clock. Maisie stated she was dropped off at her house, indicating they were driving and they dropped her off at her house as the group was planning to go to the lodge party. However, Maisie stated she did not go and remained at her sorority until Hunter, meaning Hunter Chapin, called her the morning of November 13th, 2022 at approximately 12:30 hours. Maisie stated Hunter told her to come to Xana's when he called her. Maisie said Hunter did not elaborate on why she needed to come to the house. Maisie stated Hunter Johnson, Hunter Chapin, Emily Allant, and Josie, unknown last name, Funk, and Mortensen were all there when she arrived. Maisie said someone told her when she got there that someone was in the house and Ethan and Xana didn't make it. Maisie told Ethan, Xana, and Hunter had been texting her the night prior asking her to come to the probably Sigma Chi party. Maisie said she saw the text once she woke up in the morning of November 13th, 2022. Maisie stated she did not go into the house that morning. Maisie stated she did not go into the house that morning. Wonder why she had to even state that she didn't go into the house that morning. I mean, obviously they knew the body cam of all their officers were in the house before she arrived, so why would they even ask her that question? Or why would she even make that statement? It's curious. Maisie could not think of anyone or any reason why someone would commit the unalivings. We concluded the interview. So, tells me that she was dropped off at her house by Hunter or Ethan. My guess it would be Hunter in that black Ford Explorer, because for some reason they don't want to acknowledge the fact that Hunter had to have had that black Ford Explorer. Because explain this to me. When you go to this report by Dustin Blaker, written on January 4th, 2023, and he's referencing the computers, the ECMs for the Wrangler, the Ford Explorer, and the Chevy Cruze narrative. On November 29th, 2022, I was tasked with having 5 vehicles from 1122 King Road moved to the city shop located at North Van Buren. Something Towing was the only vehicle able to accommodate the towing of the vehicles. I watched them hook up to each vehicle and then followed each vehicle from King Road to the city shop. On 11/29/22, I met with an FBI agent out of Salt Lake City. I assisted the agent with removing the ECU from the Jeep Wrangler belonging to Ethan Chapin. After the ECU was removed, I took possession of it and booked it into property. And then the next day, Aaron Morris was with that same FBI agent when he removed the ECU from a Ford Explorer belonging to Ethan Chapin, a Chevy Cruze belonging to Matty Mogan. So you're telling me that the Jeep Wrangler belonged to Ethan Chapin and the Ford Explorer belonged to Ethan Chapin, even though we know that Ethan, Hunter, and Maisie were all born at the same exact time because they're triplets. But they're going to get Ethan 2 vehicles and not get Hunter any, even though they're the exact same age down to the hour. And they're not going to get Maisie any. Well, maybe Maisie, as a young lady, was scared to drive, but you can bet if Hunter got a Jeep, if Ethan got a Jeep, Hunter got a Ford Explorer, or vice versa. And I'm guessing that Ford Explorer, based on everything we know, is actually belonging to Hunter Chapin. And the fact that they don't want to acknowledge it is sus to us. How about y'all? Now, they can try to spin this thing all they want, but the facts don't lie. Dylan running down to Bethany's room right at the time you hear somebody come out of that house and unequivocally slam a door in a car tells me that she ran out of that house and got in a car and made some phone calls. And then you see that Ford Explorer come pulling up, and the facts don't lie. That thing pulled right into that driveway and sat there the rest of the night, and then it was taken into custody by law enforcement. And you ain't going to sit here and tell me that triplets and 2 of them don't have a vehicle, but 1 of them has 2. You expect us to believe that? Give me a break. You can try to hide stuff, but because you have to file police reports and try to explain things in those reports, well, you're not going to be able to hide it very well if you know what to look for. So the facts don't lie. After this thing was over, either we know the cleanup, the defense expert says there's a cleanup that happened. Well, we can imagine that cleanup probably happened in the living room and the kitchen, because there's blood spatter on that half wall in the living room and on the wall above the steps going down to the first floor. And there is trace evidence of blood in the kitchen. So, and there was a footprint apparently cleaned up around Dylan's door. So you don't get blood spattered on a half wall and on the wall above the stairs and none on the floor. That's impossible. It's going to be on the walls and the floor. So that means somebody probably cleaned up the floors in the living room and the kitchen, maybe on the stairway going down to the first floor. Who did that? The assailants certainly didn't have enough time to do it. Not in the time frame that the prosecution alleges this thing to have happened, just like the defense expert said. So that means that cleanup happened after the fact. So if law enforcement wasn't called, then you've got some culpable people. And I think we've identified 2 roommates, and one of the siblings of one of the deceased was absolutely on scene after this atrocity. And if they're not responsible, then law enforcement is. But if law enforcement isn't, well, we need to take a closer look at those folks then, I guess. But hide it all you want. The facts don't lie, and the facts tell the truth in this case. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, your criticisms. Till next time, Pavarotti's out.
How much can I
Can see through you, see your true colors.